Okay, first I'm going to shave your leg and prep it, and then I'm going to put the Hibiclens on, which will actually absorb the stencil print I'm going to place onto you first. So let me grab you here. We're going to clean you down with some tincture green soap, and make sure you use a new razor at all times. Dispose it. Very important to take off all the hair so it doesn't cause a problem when you're tattooing. It also affects the healing process if there's hair in the tattooed area. After the shaving, you want to go through and check to make sure that you got all the hair off. And if you look over here on this left, I did miss a little spot, so it's very important to make sure that you get that. We're going to clean the skin area with a little bit of Hibiclens. Works very well, absorbs the dye off the printout very well. Gets a little bit on the tacky side, which that's what you really want, to absorb that dye. Now I'm going to put the print on by using a piece of acetate, which will help to get it on nice and straight and to get it on evenly. When you place it, position it exactly where you want it. Put it down. Press up on the design evenly to the top. Then bend it. Just hold it on the skin for just a minute and give the dye a chance to get into the skin here. That makes it nice for tattooing. Everything very clear, legible. Okay, Jeff, I'm going to grab the mirror here and I'm going to let you take a look at this before we do this on you. How's the placement, Jeff?
Very good.
Okay. Okay, with a printout like this, makes it very easy, nice, and clean to do your work. Everything's very clear. You're good to go. Okay, we're going to hook up the clip cord to the tattoo machine itself. We have a binding post on the back area, which it will go into one end, and the other end of the clip cord goes into the bottom of the tattoo machine itself. And as you notice, the clip cord and the machine are covered in plastic to prevent cross-contamination. Keeps it nice and neat and clean. We have our speed set. Now we're going to put our ink into our cap holders. Very important. Use tissue when twisting your tops so you don't contaminate the tops. If you notice the bags are on the bottles at all times, they will be changed at the end too. You can fill a few caps in your cap holder for using black, because black does not separate like regular colors do, because there's a different chemical mix for the inks themselves when you're dealing with color versus black. I'm going to put a little bit of Vaseline on the top of my hand, which will save me from going back and forth during working time. And I also, before I tattoo, I will place a tiny bit of Vaseline on the skin, because when you're tattooing itself, it helps to keep the ink from running. When you're starting an outline, you want to pick 2 points, A to B, always working from one point to another. Don't start your tattooing, stop your line, try to pick up again. It's very difficult. You will get a small dot in a line a lot of times if you try to do that. Also, when you're starting your tattooing, if you look at the position of my hand, the fingers are resting on the skin, which enables me to run very smoothly. Like a pen, it rests in that corner and will allow me to run a stable line. Okay, we're going to start working on you here now. We're going to start right at this point here. We're going to run straight down to the bottom. Nice and slow and steady. Not too fast, because running a fast line only means you got to go back and touch it up. And trying to touch up doesn't work. Steady, slow, nice, hard black line. A little bit of Vaseline. You notice I'm not getting big puddles on the skin. Why? Because the needle's set right, the little bit extra Vaseline I'm using, and being steady. If you'll notice as I'm running that line, we're not getting big puddles. A lot of people tend to worry about smearing the actual print that you've put on, but if you're very light, if you'll notice the way I touch it, I'm not actually rubbing on it, I'm dabbing it, which is important. You can do all the rubbing afterwards. After you get that on, you're good to go. If you take that Vaseline when you're working and you do this with it, you see that gob? When you run a line through that, the ink will never penetrate into the skin tissue. You'll look and wipe it off and you'll have a gray scratch mark. Very important. If you're going to go with the Vaseline, very, very little. Also, you can grease your fingers just a little bit, which does help you to slide along the skin tissue better. Make sure you're keeping the skin tissue tight. If you look, my forefinger and my thumb, I'm not squeezing like this, because believe it or not, when you're tattooing, if you're squeezing too hard, you're making the tissue too tight, and what happens is you actually end up cutting the tissue. You have to find it something that's comfortable for you. If you'll notice, I'm not squeezing real hard. Sometimes during the tattoo process, if your customer hasn't prepared himself physically and mentally for a tattoo, they sometimes become lightheaded. So sometimes you may have to work a little slower, or you may have to take a little break, or you may have to give your customer some water. I prefer personally to work with a fan in my studio to keep your customer cool at all times. And I also have candy on hand in case your customers get a little lightheaded, because it helps the blood sugar level come back up. If you'll notice, I started my design at the bottom, and the reason for that is if I was to start it at the top, by the time I got to the bottom, my design would be distorted and I would not be able to read it very well. You see the position of my fingers? That's why I say, stay in that position. Get used to doing it one way. If you notice when I'm working, I'm always trying to work this way or this way. If you take your tattoo machine and you're working this way, you're drawing the machine in a backwards motion, and remember, it goes back to making sure the needle is sitting flush in the bottom of the tube. So try to visualize you're actually picking up the needle from the bottom of the tube, and you will get a bad line. If you'll notice on the line I just put on, the machine was actually angled a little bit to the side, but I did go very slow with it. If you have to get in a position where you have to do a line such as that, you have to go slower, because if you go quickly with the line, it will pick that needle up. When I spoke to you earlier about stopping in the middle of a line, if you have to do it and you've got to pick up on a line, you have to go back. When you start the line, you have to go back just a little bit from where you stopped, so you won't end up with a dot in the line. If you look, I stopped right here, so I can show you how to pick up on a line without being detected within your design. You have to start back. You actually have to start back on the line a little bit from where you left off, so you can work the line in here and then continue on and make your line. Also, while you're working, very important, make sure that you're working off the points of the needles. You don't want to take this machine and this tube and go onto the skin, because I can tell you, you'll dig a big hole in people and they'll be very unhappy. You have to work off the points of the needles themselves, which the points I'm referring to, visualize as a pencil, like this. You're only working off of that much of the needle. You're not using the whole part of the lead itself. Very important. If you'll notice,